I mean, off the top of my head, the worst thing about Too Fast, Too Furious is the villain. And I think that the villain is important to the whole franchise. I mean, given the last film prior to this didn't have a villain, but every Fast and Furious after this had a very strong villain, even Fate of the Furious. Here we get the actor Cole Hauser playing Verone, who's a bargain bin Scarface who's smuggling drugs out of Miami. Small time, very small time. And not to mention that he reminds me a lot of like your new girlfriend's ex older boyfriend who has a ton of insecurities to the point where he's taking around a bucket and a rat and torturing people as a big power trip. I mean, who carries around a bucket and a rat?
Too Fast and Furious is kind of a mess of it, like, it's not even necessarily a mess of a movie, it's just a boring movie, but it's not the mess that Fast and Furious 8 is. Fast and Furious 8 takes all the really fun elements of the franchise that have kind of turned it from a basic street racing franchise that Too Fast, Too Furious was a part of. Like, those movies work because of how bombastic and how over the top they get. Fate takes it too far somehow. It's a movie with a backdoor pilot for a spin-off halfway through it. It's a movie with Academy Award winner Charlize Theron playing Cypher, the cyber terrorist commando leader. It's so divorced from any of the fun bombast, and it just goes for pure spectacle. It loses any of the actual appeal and heart of these films. Too Fast, Too Furious is bad, yeah, but it's boring bad. This is actively bad, which I feel is worse.
That is fair. That is fair. But that is something that we've been accustomed to since Fast 5. Them upping the ante on each film with their action is Fast and Furious now. That is the mark. One of the worst things about Too Fast, Too Furious, and why I think it is the worst film in the franchise, is the plot. It's a rehash of the previous film, which is a rehash of Point Break, and it's just the Miami PD recruiting a ex-cop to help stop a small-time drug lord. Come on, that's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. This film is what Batman and Robin was to those Schumacher films. It is a commercial to sell toys. It makes no sense, to the point where they had to spend so much on CGI just to hide the fact that the plot was so terrible. I mean, there's even a terrible, terrible intro that led into the Too Fast and Too Furious logo, which it looked like they spent so much time on and the animation just to do it. The plot is terrible.
I mean, that is an odd choice for him to make as a character. It's the sort of thing you would expect from that franchise at that time. As ridiculous as the Fast and the Furious movies have gotten, to the point where I think it was 6, my favorite one, where they push the cars out of a plane. This is a franchise that has gotten ridiculous in the best way possible, but somehow it breaks the suspension of disbelief in Fate. Somehow. You're getting submarine chases in this film. It's taking it to a point where it really stops being kind of aware of how silly it is, like some of the previous ones. It loses connection with the characters, which is what ties those previous ones down and keeps it from getting too absurd. It turns into a parody of itself. Too Fast, Too Furious may be bad, and yeah, carrying a rat around to torture people is a weird power move, but it's not chasing people with a submarine weird.
That is fair. Jason Statham sitting down with a family and drinking Corona makes no sense considering what he did to Han. But if you were to understand what was actually going on, you'd understand, just like Dom, he was motivated by a certain entity, which was Charlize Theron's character. In Fast and Furious 6, Owen Shaw was running rampage and stealing a bunch of things, and we come to figure out in Fate that it was because of Charlize Theron. And in Fast and Furious 7, Jason Statham is going around trying to take down Dom's crew and trying to kill them because they attacked his brother. So there's a plot, there's a whole thing, and why this whole thing makes sense. It makes sense because they're all driven by a certain entity.
Yes, Too Fast, Too Furious. I'm not gonna lie, if I wasn't arguing that Fate is worse, Too Fast, Too Furious is probably the second worst of this entire series. Fate is a movie where and I know this is going to strike a nerve with you. Jason Statham's character redeems himself in this film. He helped save a baby, and therefore it's okay that he murdered some members of the team previously. All those times he killed a bunch of people don't count anymore. It's cool. He can have a Corona with the guys. I think the ultimate flaw of Fate, what separates the bombastic, dumb fun of the previous 5, 6, and 7 from Fate, which also, my god, can we talk about how that's a beautifully stupid title, F8. It really does lose the characters. People like Toledo, who are like the thinnest idea of a character already, but has got just enough kind of charm and appeal to him to get you going. This one, he's doing flip-flops of character motivation across the film. All the characters, none of the likability is there. None of the consistency is there. Not like I know I say consistency with the Fast and Furious movie. That's like saying Superman's cool with kryptonite. But it's weird. Like, it loses that human element that I think does ground these films. Too Fast and Furious does at least have that little bit of chemistry that you get out of Paul Walker on Vin Diesel. It does have Ludacris being ludicrous. Like, it does have little bits that are, if not redeemable, then at least watchable.
If you were to take this film and take it out of the franchise will still flourish and still make sense. Mainly because they've changed so many things of the characters that were introduced in Too Fast and Too Furious that it doesn't even matter. I mean, you had Tyrese, who was this badass demolition derby driver, and then when you go to see him again in Fast and 5, he's this jokester and people just shitting on him, and he's just a joke. Then you get Tesh, who's the small-time booking entrepreneur who has his own garage, and then when you meet him in Fast 5, he's this master hacker. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. This is why Too Fast and Furious is the worst film and is irrelevant.
With Too Fast, Too Furious, you have the unexpected sequel to a Point Break ripoff, like you say, and the stakes are relatively low, the production is relatively low. It's not trying to be anything more than what it is, which is serviceable for 2002, I think. Fate of the Furious, F8, a movie that made over $1 billion with a B, stars Academy Award-winning performers along with The Rock. If you're going to bring Helen Mirren into your film, I kind of expect you to meet that level, even if it's like the previous Fast and Furious films that she'd appeared in, which were at least fun. Fate lets down on so many levels, and is everything that you could construe as wrong with the direction of the franchise. That's what Fate is.